for Petite Martinique, Carriacou, and Grenada. This address will be aired at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, April 27th, on various social media outlets and on all major radio and TV stations, including this medium. For more information and to learn more about Team NDC, please visit ndcgrenada.org. Thank you.
The preceding was a paid political announcement. The views expressed are of the client and not the Grenada Broadcasting Network.
Can you please remain standing for the national anthem?
Hail Grenada, land of us, we pledge ourselves to thee. Heads, hearts, and hands in unity to reach our destiny. Ever conscious of God, being proud of our heritage, may we with faith and courage aspire, build, advance. As one people, one family, God bless our nation.
Please be seated. And now, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell.
Sisters and brothers, ladies and gentlemen, Grenadians, patriots all, tonight our nation sits at the crossroad, still challenged by the lingering after effects of a pandemic, facing uncertainty and the global space overheated by man's damage to the environment, and chilled by the harsh reality of a war, far removed but with far-reaching impacts. In this perfect storm, sisters and brothers, that's brewing, our generation is being called to meet the moment. It calls for a fresh conversation, actually a different conversation that will inspire patriotic actions and set the tone for a worthy future of which we all can be proud. In the face of what seems to be insurmountable odds, where the pain of history intertwines with the demands of now and the hopes of tomorrow, we must get to this near perfect place by being reasonable, rational, and understanding the realities of a developing economy. Sisters and brothers, our history is filled with many examples of our people overcoming dire situations and then striving. When our forefathers were brought here against their will 5 centuries ago, we were not supposed to emerge with a viable independent society. Yet, we have done so, and we are still standing. When bombs rained down on Bushaju in 1983, and bitterness flowed like the Paradise River, we healed the wounds of intervention to bounce back with our pride and our dignity intact. This period, and in particular, this pension issue, presents another defining moment in our history that we as a nation must face together. Sisters and brothers, we meet this moment by not being consumed with old suspicions, nor by distrust, by looking at personalities, but by a national discourse befitting of the creation of a society worthy of the inheritance of our children and grandchildren. This recent High Court decision, whatever we may think about it, of reinstating public sector pension scheme and rules, creates a very large financial pension obligation, which is additional to pension expenditures of the National Insurance Scheme. And remember, all of us must remember, government, like all other employers, is responsible for paying 6% already of employee earnings as part of their monthly contributions to the NIS. The 2022 fiscal impact is estimated of that decision at between 2.2 and 7.9% of GDP. Largely dependent, sisters and brothers, of how current employees who already meet the reinstated scheme eligibility conditions, how they react to the court ruling. In recent past, your government attempted to address public employees' dissatisfaction through legal amendments and agreements with your trade union brothers and sisters. In response to the demands to reduce the large difference between the NIS and public sector pensions, government signed in 2018 a memorandum of understanding with the trade unions, granting a top-up to a limited group of people. Eligibility was conditioned on 26 years and 8 months of service or more, retiring at the age of 60. The top-up was equal to the difference between the NIS pension and 70% of the retiree's final salary. That was all we agreed. The government also introduced in 2003 a Special Pension Act for people who were hired prior to 1985 and who by virtue of their employment status did not qualify for a public sector pension. Although this act was not considered by the High Court judge, it's important to note this, its constitutionality may now need to be considered. The recent court ruling declared the closure of public sector pension schemes unconstitutional, retroactively establishing pension entitlements for public employees who entered the service after 1985. That ruling, sisters and brothers, implies that pension benefits would become payable to public employers who were hired after 1985, and not solely NIS pension, not only solely on NIS pension benefits. The payment implications of that ruling comprise: 1, pension to people hired after 1985 and retired before the date of the ruling for the period between the date of retirement and the implementation of the ruling. 2, future pension to people hired after 1985 and retired before the date of the ruling for the period after implementation of the ruling until the beneficiary's death. Thirdly, current people who will now retire from the public service. And fourthly, pension for people who will be hired after the date of the ruling. While that ruling only focused on the constitutionality of certain features of that Pension Act governing public sector pensions, it is nevertheless creating a pension system which differs considerably from what was envisioned by both the 1983 reform and its revisions in the past 30 years. Sisters and brothers, the original pension reform concept of the early 1980s did not foresee public sector employees earning 2 pensions in parallel, one from the contributory NIS and another one from the non-contributory public schemes. The court ruling has created 2-pillar pension system for public sector workers, which, without further changes, would create a large fiscal burden on the state, since in its current construct, it is non-contributory. As part of the wider national dialogue, therefore, it is a matter that must be addressed through rational discourse and widespread consultation. We must know, we must sit down and consult and talk. While these fiscal obligations of the court ruling are still being tabulated, preliminary indication, and these are just preliminary numbers, are that we will have to find at least $465 million. Sisters and brothers, take that in. $465 million. That's not all. And then on average, we'd have to find $120 more million each year for at least the next 37 years. And that figure is without considering inflation. 37 years, Keith Mitchell will not be there. Let's get it. It's not a Keith Mitchell issue here. All are we. The fiscal impact of the court ruling will be dominated by benefit obligation towards current employees who could have retired earlier under the reinstated pension scheme rules. The timing and the consequent cash flow impact, sisters and brothers, of these obligations can vary within a wide range, depending on the behavioral responses of the employees concerned. In the current version of the fiscal impact estimate, the number of retirees and their benefits were estimated using a simple statistical method for the period 2023 to 2030. This, sisters and brothers, has serious fiscal implications and is no walk in the park. But this administration, the government of the day that I had the privilege to lead, is determined and committed to finding a fair solution. In recent weeks, we have been holding many discussions with most stakeholders so far, seeking local and international technical advice as we consider what's best for this nation in approaching that serious challenge. There are some other constitutional concerns coming out of the judgment that must be addressed, or else, if we do not, there could be further conflicts down the road. But in the medium term, we will propose a mechanism for us collectively as a society to address those. We need all of us together with this. Therefore, in a difficult moment, a tough moment, one of the toughest that I have had in my own period of service to this country, in considering all the issues before us, this government, your government, has taken the decision not to appeal the recent court decision. We heard me? We have taken a decision not to do so. Sisters and brothers, that doesn't mean that's the end of it. There's a lot more. We believe there are ways we can honor the intent of the judgment as it relates to the reinstatement of public pension, even while we seek to address going forward some of the inconsistencies and other aspects of the judgment that clearly we have seen. My friends, sisters, and brothers throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, government is committed to sitting down with all concerned who want to sit down. We can't force anybody. This consultative approach is consistent with our posture on matters of national interest. Years ago, when the court ruled in favor of Humlin Armstrong in our pension fight, it seems like every time this government is meeting, This government, as a matter of policy and principle, refused to appeal the ruling. We could have done so, as is the case today, and we had strong legal advice, as is the case today, that there are good enough grounds for an appeal, but we chose not to. My friends, sisters, and brothers, let this be remembered as our first genuine signal that we have always intended to do the right for all workers throughout this blessed country. Refusing to appeal the judgment, however, might be considered by some as the easy part. Regarding the issue of payment of state pensions, unless we manage the process well and set out a viable roadmap under which the state could meet its obligations, it can completely derail the economy, sink thousands into dire poverty, and set us back many years and cripple the future development plans. That must not happen under our watch. We can only have the best outcome, however, my friends, by having the most honest conversations. And that must include all stakeholders being engaged. Because this is not about just the public workers. It's about all the citizens of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. The government obviously must lead on this matter. Have no choice. But it puts a reasonable final solution in doubt unless we purposely engage all stakeholders. And that we have begun to do. We have begun dialogue with our social partners. We've spoken to churches, some NGOs, the business community, social organizations, and trade unions. And the first meeting with the trade unions body as a whole, and just a limited group, was scheduled for last Friday. Unfortunately, for whatever reason unknown to me, there was a decision taken by the major unions not to attend the meeting and participate in the discussions that involve the peace and stability of our beautiful country. Fellow Grenadians, Carriaconians, Petite Martinicans, I stand here tonight still hopeful that this broader dialogue will get started in the interest of public officers who have already retired and those whom retirement is likely soon. We understand that the leadership of some of the trade unions has some lingering concerns, and that's okay. I have concerns too. But we are determined to engage them in a meaningful way and to consider their input as we chart the way forward. Sisters and brothers, our society will be better off if dialogue continues. We remain hopeful that the Grenada Union of Teachers, the Public Workers Union, that's the leadership I'm talking about, and the Technical and Allied Workers Union will join this broadening and urgent national discussion on the single most defining issue of our time. Sisters and brothers, we must think beyond here and now and consider what our legacy will be as it relates to this issue. We therefore remain hopeful that all unions and stakeholders will join in this national conversation, because we know that despite all the disagreements through the years, the one thing that brings us together is our patriotism and our unquestioned love for this beautiful nation called Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. This nation, under the banner of its 7 stars, must provide us with a reason to set aside our differences for once. Set aside those in the interest of the wider national objectives. Tonight, therefore, we once again extend an open hand, understanding that this moment calls for all of us to beat our swords into plowshares and our spears into pruning hooks. This government has also moved to set up a broad-based advisory committee that will provide further technical advice and other general guidance on this complex but critically important issue. They will use their expertise and experiences in studying the entire issue and the decision that the government has made, with an objective to make specific recommendations to the government on how we move forward. In other words, it's not just pay me. That committee will be headed by economist and experienced global public servant Dr. Spencer Thomas. And it includes also economist Dr. Carrie Grenade and Dr. Patrick Antoine, and a former Chief Justice of the Caribbean Court of Justice, Sir Dennis Byron. There will also be a 5th representative coming from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. The governor will inform us shortly. Dr. Thomas is a special envoy for the multilateral environmental agreements and the country's lead negotiator for climate change and biodiversity. He has over 25 years of experience in international environmental diplomacy. He was a lead negotiator for the Alliance of Small States during the period of Grenada's chairmanship of that body in 2007 to 2011. Dr. Carrie Grenade is an IMF long-term macroeconomic advisor. She also formerly worked with the Caribbean Development Bank. Dr. Patrick Antoine is a consultant, an economic policy advisor, and trade and finance negotiator who has worked extensively in the region and beyond. Sir Charles Michael Dennis Byron is a former president of the Caribbean Court of Justice, former president of the International Criminal Tribunal of Rwanda, and the former Chief Justice of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. Born in St. Kitts, he has also served in Grenada as a High Court judge. This advisory committee, friends, held the first meeting this morning with the Minister of Finance. And they will get to work immediately to look at all aspects of the implication of this pension issue and to make specific recommendations for the government to consider. The government expects that it will have the actionable recommendations within 3 months. We understand what some people will describe as the fierce urgency of now. We know that. But sisters and brothers, this society that we are seeking to build, as imperfect as it is right now, must turn out to be fair and balanced. Emerging from this challenge is the need for all of us to urgently and completely relook the organization of the entire society, and to ensure it's fairer for working people, and it gives disadvantaged people a better shot. As challenging as all of this might sound, we believe that we now have a big opportunity here, emerging from all of this, to borrow a slogan from the past, not just to build another society, but to build a just society. Shortly, this government will unveil a plan for what we call expanding the empowerment agenda. And we must refocus our effort to decisively be able to also declare war on poverty. We are currently reviewing all aspects of that idea, as the state considers how best to meet its obligation to the public sector workers, its obligations to all other sectors remain intact. Sisters and brothers, we cannot and we would not use the excuse of the pension challenge to abandon our people, especially those who need the government intervention the most. That will not only be immoral, but it will also be counterproductive and will create a further imbalance in our society. We must, sisters and brothers, we must maintain our youth empowerment programs. We abandon our young children, we abandon our future. We must continue to spend on giving our people more access to education. We must invest even more in healthcare and maintain a viable infrastructure that can adequately run a local economic life. We believe at the core, these are working people issues. All working people, that is. The payment of pension must be seen as only one aspect of the new economic construct that also emphasizes greater production and better efficiencies, especially in the public sector. We know we must improve the production at the public sector levels. In fact, to ignore those is to effectively undermine the cause of all workers. Prior to the issue of this now due pension, this government was actively considering a program we would have described as 100 million for 100,000, where over the next 5 years, we plan to spend over $100 million each year. making direct investments in working people, in a daring and ambitious and open declaration of war on poverty. We are still determined to expand that empowerment agenda, but we may be forced to review some of its aspects given this new inescapable liability. But we are determined to find a way to keep some of it, because we think it is very important in building that just society I have just alluded to. Tonight, sisters and brothers, I know we could be sitting here, and while we're talking, there's a family in Belle Isle that we must get to. And there is a young girl in Grand Roy, as an example, filled with ambition and ability, who we shall invest in and affording her the best education she deserves and asking for. They, sisters and brothers, they are counting on us. There also could be a young man in River Sally, as an example, that has his long-held dream of opening his mechanic shop. The idea is viable, he has the talent, but he needs a hand up. And we should not let him down. A social security structure, sisters and brothers, shall be strengthened for this Birch Grove cocoa farmer, for example, who this morning marched up to the foothills of Granitang like he has done for the past decades. We can't forget him. We cannot forget our farmers, and we cannot use the excuse of pension for public workers to prevent him from having a viable life. The farming community, we owe them. The fishermen of Grove and other parts of the country, eager for better arrangements to help them guarantee markets for their catch. And when in Grove it looked like the things were breaking down, they took to the streets. We immediately acted on their behalf. They wanted a fair break too. All of us must have one. The country, therefore, sisters and brothers, must commit itself to fight for everyone, not just a single category of persons in our society. Otherwise, we should not be in government. In this competitive economic environment, where it's every man's right to fight for his own family, we must not do so at the expense of the other man's family. The whole Bible says, love our neighbor as ourselves. In all our considerations, therefore, we must also be determined to continue to live in a society where we are completely committed to looking after the less fortunate and those who are more vulnerable. And so, in our decision making and in our posture, all of us must always be mindful of the biblical precept which says, whatever you do to the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you do it for me. My friends, COVID-19 pandemic dealt a drastic blow to the economies all over the world. And Grenada, therefore, was no exception. Thankfully, government's prudent fiscal management in the preceding years allowed us to develop a buffer, which we were able to tap into, along with access to highly concessional financing from international institutions. In the past few months, our economy has continued along the road to recovery. But we are still not seeing the pre-pandemic numbers yet. Government's response to the pandemic necessitated additional expenditure, and even now, expenditure continues to rise. Additionally, Grenada, like all other countries around the world, continue to experience inflationary pressure on imported goods and services because of dreaded war in Europe. In the 2022 budget, government started to address this challenge by introducing a number of cost of living measures. But we have continued to examine ways in which we can further alleviate the financial burden on the population, particularly as it relates to food items. Government will soon roll out additional measures, and tonight, therefore, I'm appealing to the business community to partner with us when we do, to ensure that the benefit reaches the people in keeping with our intentions. Sisters and brothers, government continues its efforts to mitigate the impact of rising food prices. And therefore we must embrace the opportunity to boost food production and become less dependent on imports, and to improve our country's food security. We must focus more on growing what we eat and eating what we grow. While sometimes circumstances may appear to bring us to our knees, we shall move forward on our feet. We have done so in the past. We are equally determined today to find fair solutions to complex problems, but we must do it together. We have an opportunity, therefore, to galvanize this nation, community by community, each working for the general good. With faith and courage, we shall aspire, we shall advance, and we shall build together. There must be a greater understanding among competing interests in the society, and an unshakable national unity that must bind us together so that we can better tackle today's challenges. The issue we face today is one of national importance long after Keith Mitchell leaves the shores, and one which has significant implication for all citizens and those coming. It is not just, brothers and sisters, a simple trade union matter. The money comes from the people of the country. It is a public service matter, and everyone will have to meet the challenges to meet that demand. Let's get it right. This pension issue will affect all of us, even those that are not working in the public service. They have to be involved. So don't say we should not be talking to them. We have to talk to everybody. This is their money, not mine, not Boeing own, not anyone in government. All are we own. Therefore, I assure you that government will not play games. This government, particularly in this time in my public service when I'm getting ready to quit the stage, will not play games with the future of this beautiful country of ours and the future of our children and grandchildren. That must not be my legacy, sisters and brothers, and I'm on the serious legacy path. I would only do what I believe is right. We must choose to work together to find solutions that go beyond any political party. People come and promise all kinds of stuff. It's not about promises. It's about what is available. What can we do together? It's not about the political organizations or individuals. These solutions must be grounded in the interests of our beloved country and equally our beloved people. Together, therefore, we must be more determined to elevate a more caring society. People may disagree about many things, but the one thing we must all agree on is that the future is worth fighting for. We won't fear the future. We shall embrace the possibilities that it presents and walk hand in hand together towards it. Therefore, tonight, I say, with God's help, I ask Him to bless you, me, and all of us. And may God continue to bless this beautiful piece of this earth, this spice country that He has given us and blessed us with. We thank Him. Thank all of you for being here this evening. Thank you all. Good evening, everybody.
Stepping off the plane, it's so easy to breathe again. Life in the big city has finally took its toll. It's been so long, but I'm finally home. And what better place to rest my weary bones but on this beautiful island where there's so much to see. Every corner I turn, there's something there to remind me of my beautiful nation and what it means to me. Not a thing out of place, that's what's special about it. Do you hear? It's the songs the birds are singing. Do you hear? It's the song that's everlasting and this.
The following is a paid political announcement. The views expressed are of the client and not the Grenada Broadcasting Network.
Fellow citizens and residents of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, this message is to inform you that the leader of the National Democratic Congress, Mr. Dickon Mitchell, will be addressing the nation in order to present his party's new vision for Petite Martinique, Carriacou, and Grenada. This address will be aired at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, April 27th, on various social media outlets and on all major radio and TV stations, including this medium. For more information and to learn more about Team NDC, please visit ndcgrenada.org. Thank you.
The preceding was a paid political announcement. The views expressed are of the client and not the Grenada Broadcasting Network.